Why did the purity keep being diluted as the years went on?
Because of the amount of interdiction that there was,
Right.
and the amount of people that had to be paid.
Right.
Along the trail.
It's the 80s now. You can't just do whatever you want.
Right.
Okay.
So
is it still coming
the French
from
Connection is up.
Yeah.
That really things up because there was so much publicity around it that all these different Warren Commission, all these started like being like, hey, what the? So they're doing, and Klaus Barbie is bringing, and all these people are getting, and because how are the blacks getting the, like it's starting to, things started really like people are greedy, so people will always take the chance to get, but you have more people to pay from the point of origin to the commercial point. Yeah, you got more people to pay,
and it's still coming from
stretch it.
It's still coming from Southeast Asia, right?
Southeast Asia.
Afghanistan,
right?
Yeah.
So you got a lot of people to pay. You know what I mean?
Sense.
And the routes are always changing.
Right.
They'll go through this part of the world and come around.
Yeah.
That's a whole other set of people to pay.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're talking about, and that they're hip to what's been happening with the last route, whatever, and the kinds of new levels of interdiction that they have going on, whatever. So it's like, we need this, whatever. Right. So it's like, well, in order for us to do that, because at the point at the grower point, the prices never really made more money.
No.
You know what I mean? Because it's still just growing out the ground over here, right? It's getting it out of those points became more difficult, right? Because there was less corruption, and people, I guess, were starting to realize that this is more destructive than it seemed,
right?
So then you start having people who were more along the lines of trying to do the right thing and stop it, whatever. Yeah. So that means that now you have to really look hard to find somebody who's willing to take the risk, and whatever.
So price goes up,
price keeps going up, quality keeps going down,
right?
So by the time it gets to the States, what was taking a 60, because I was like, there's no way in the world that the Earth is producing a less potent product.
No.
So somebody somewhere along the way is doing something that they weren't doing before.
Right. Yeah.
And at the point at which the business is growing, expanding in terms of the clientele. More people are using, more people are buying, more money is being made, but the quality is going down. So people start saying, somewhere started saying, well, these will buy anything, it seems.
Right.
That seemed at some point it was a standard, but that standard is kind of lessening because people are being introduced to a lesser and lesser quality at their point of inception. So they don't know.
Right.
They have no idea.
But do you think that also created less long-term addicts? Because the
game is 80% mental. So people are addicted here.
Okay.
They're addicted here. Heroin, of course, it attaches itself to your hemoglobin. That's a physical addiction. But largely, especially cocaine is a psychological addiction.
So why do you think that? Do you think there were less heroin addicts in the 1980s in New York, or did they just go somewhere else?
No. There were definitely less.
Why?
Because motherfuckers were getting on cocaine.
Okay.
There were definitely less.
So
and there was a period a lot of people were getting the culmination of the adverse impact of heroin was around 79, 80, whatever it was. It's like, yo, this is a scourge.
Right.
This is a scourge.
Epidemic.
It's an epidemic. So, a lot of people started moving away from it and getting off of it or whatever have you,
Right.
And other things were becoming were very popular or more popular or alternatives or whatever.
So did you think junkies got clean by moving to coke?
I saw it. Okay. I witnessed it firsthand.
So you're working the shooting gallery, because this is taking us 20 minutes to get through the story, but you're working the shooting gallery and you start to see customers passing your spot where you're selling dope out of and going up to the freebase spot.
And I'm trying to tell my uncles and Steve, this is happening. I'm here in real time.
Yeah.
This is happening.
Yeah.
That cocaine. Party with that cocaine, goddamn party favor. I'm like, yo, listen to what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
This is happening.
Yeah.
People who had been hardcore heroin addicts for 20 years had not been able to be stopped by, programs and all kinds of whatever, incarceration. And these are hardcore heroin addicts. And these are people whom I'd gotten introduced to as clients in this particular situation.
Yeah.
Right? And I shot in their neck and behind their ankles, behind their knees, whatever. These are hardcore dope fiends.
Yeah.
And then one day they come and they might stop by and say, what's up, whatever, and grab a bag. But then they're going to go upstairs, right, to Cuba.
Yeah.
Cuba was a dude who would come and was getting money. He was a coke connect, whatever, and partying and hanging out and having, all the access to the world of cocaine and smoking. And a lot of people don't know that prior to the whole crack epidemic here in the States, they had the pasteles epidemic in South America. It was the same exact thing. People selling up, stealing every goddamn thing. It already happened.
Right.
In South America, all over South America.
Right.
Right. So these guys been on that. That's how it got here, because you had international businessmen who were being introduced to it over in South America. You had the big stars like, say, the Isley Brothers and
Pryor.
all those guys.
Yeah.
They are being introduced to it by, them moving around in different parts of the world and whatever, and they're being introduced to it, and this is the next level of shit. This is some elite shit. Like people, I don't know how commonly people hear about the parties where there'd be like these big bowls full of, boulders of cocaine, cooked and uncooked.
Right.
And that's how it got, trickled into the underworld, because you got high-end performers, black people who had a lot of money, and who are they commonly hanging around? Other black people with a lot of money. It just happens to be street money.
Right.
That's who they're partying with. That's who they're in Leviticus with, and 54 with, and all these other places, where they're coming together, whatever, and after hours spots, huge, right?
Yeah.
And so these guys are, come on over, man, party and hang out, whatever, in the hotel or wherever it is, and they're freebasing.
So somehow this cooked cocaine morphs slowly into crack cocaine.
Well, the cocaine is crack cocaine. Crack is just a word that the news made up, because of what it looked like.
Right.
By the time they got wind of it, these chips, these if you look at a wall in a building, abandoned building, whatever, tattered building, and you see the spaces between the paint, and it looks like somebody took something out of the wall. That's right. That's where they got the name from.
That's right.
It's like they took so it's a crack. Took a crack out the wall.
Okay, so with that though, but then how did the price go from a rich man's high, I'm smoking cooked cocaine, to I'm buying a $2 yellow top in Harlem? How did that economy of scale occur?
Horrifically. During this time, remember, cocaine is $60,000 a key. Gram of coke cut is $100.
Right.
And very few people have it.
Right.
Now, while this has happened in South America, you've got guys like the Ochoas, right, and later on Pablo and Griselda, and you got these people who are essentially in a kind of a war with the United States, but they don't have armies and artillery and that kind of thing. They've got this stuff that grows in their country that Americans love to consume. So they start sending that in greater and greater numbers. Well, what happens when supply increases? The value of supply goes down.
Supply goes down. There you go.
Right. So, in 80, there was a lot less cocaine. Right. A lot less people aware of it. A lot less people who could afford it. And then by 82, 83, there's a good deal more. Right. But people aren't at this level. They aren't smoking it because, like I said, putting water anywhere near your cocaine is like, are you out your mind? It's a sin, right? Only people at that level who have access to that amount, and have access to this process, which involves ethyl alcohol, which is highly volatile and explosive. Like there could be a cloud of ethyl alcohol right here in front of us. We wouldn't smell it, we wouldn't see it. But light a match, the air would explode. Not like people have seen, it's go poof, but this would go bong.
Wow.
That's how Richard Pryor caught fire.
Right.
So now these points are important. The amount of cocaine being produced and pushed into the country this is like narco-terrorism. It's like, United States doesn't want to, continue to give us the support, the monies or whatever, for us to build up infrastructure or whatever. Or they want to do it. Oh, well, the only way we can make money is if we send cocaine. You guys love it, so we're going to send a whole bunch of it to you. And in fact, Pablo's idea was destroy America's youth by sending this, right? So you got all this cocaine starting to come in at mass amounts. Then you have the process of cooking it having been simplified down to baking soda. When I got introduced to it, when T introduced me to it, it was baking soda. Okay. And so how he introduced me to it was what people would smoke or whatever have you. You had the bowl of the pipe, the whole pipe. Right. And there were certain rules, like when you put the crack in or the base in the top and you take the torch, and I charge you $1 for the use of the pipe and $1 for use of the torch. And you take the torch and you burn it down and then you smoke it, whatever, and it fills up the bowl. Now, after 2 or 3 days of that bowl, that's just a clear piece of glass, is opaque now because it's covered with the residue of the cocaine. So then he taught me to take and put a little bit out, like take the pipe apart, put a little bit of alcohol inside the bowl, swish it around. It clears all of the cocaine off of the sides, pour it onto a mirror and light that. And then it burns off, and you've got the pure coke paste left. Right. You know what I mean? And so you scrape that up, and then you take a little bottle and you recook that whatever, and that's even more potent. Oh. And so
that's what's called base.
Yes,
in South America.
That's right. That's right. So this is how people can consume it, and these like they might buy. Since I didn't have cocaine from my family, I would go down the block to the corner to the bar. My godfather, his name was also Butch. People used to get them confused all the damn time because of the name. But he would have some coke, so I'd buy some coke from him. Right, they'd give me, somebody said, give me some coke, whatever. So I'd get $50 from them, go down the block, buy half from them, come back, cook it for them, charge them for cooking it, then charge them for the pipe and the torch, right? And then then you couldn't turn the thing down like that to try to bring the oil back down so you could burn it again, like so it would build up, whatever. Unfortunately, I had to take a lot of that stuff that I scraped up, and I would take it to school and sell it to kids in school. Wow. But
and this seemed to be a bane of your time in the crack game, was always a supply issue, because I don't think your family ever got into it. I think they left it alone.
They didn't until much later, right?
Did Uncle Butch?
Yes, much later though.
Oh, okay.
Much later.
What are we talking?
But he stayed on the heroin.
He never gave up heroin.
Never.
Right.
Never. He stayed on it.
Right.
Because he understood the economics of it. Right.
Of course.
Right. And so.
But it seems like a supply I'm talking about when you ran crack crews throughout the city. I'm kind of just jumping ahead because I want to get to Baltimore. Throughout high school, from 15 to 18, you're running crack spots, in Harlem and in the Bronx and everywhere in between. Queens, you ran
South
with.
Jamaica.
That's right. You were over there hustling with, the kingpins and the street bosses over there. But it seems like your big problem was supply. Like you couldn't find a really steady connect.
Yeah. And there was so much coke out there that it wasn't really a major concern because there's so much coke out there. Right. So I could always find somebody to buy, a key from, a couple of keys from. That was not difficult because I'd been around so long, you know what I mean, that once I began to focus on it, it wasn't that difficult. Okay. But having that supplier, like having, a supplier like my family, with the heroin would have made a tremendous difference, in the income and the opportunity, right?
And you were just too young to have those, those direct Dominican or Colombian,
yes,
I got 100 keys coming on Thursday, kind of.
Thank goodness.
Right.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Well, that's what Unique, as
Right.
we know, Unique Mecca, he was that generation, a little bit older than you. He's a couple years older than you, and he's already real hard.
Unique just turned 60.
What's that? Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he just turned 60.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks great for 60. For what he's been through.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Right.
But he was a guy that was dealing with like $10,000, $12,000 kilos, 25 or 30 a day.
Yeah, he got down to Miami, and well, I mean, it kind of started in the Heights.
So, but how did you? I guess what separated that from kind of your side of the game? Was it just age, or he just had?
Well, I mean, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that he was aware of Dominicans before I was, because he was smoking.
Right.
He's one of those early smokers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He
was robbing them. He knew where the coke was because he was robbing them. He was sticking them up for the coke.
Yeah.
And he was smoking, so he was hip to, the smoking aspect of it, which would become a major part of, being able to make a bunch of money in the coke game.
Right.
So he had been introduced in an intimate way to those components that would make up the major part of the opportunity in that space later on.
Right.
So working in the weed spots and what they called the gates back in the day, that gave him a certain level of exposure, and then smoking, that gave him a certain level of exposure about something that was forthcoming that like nobody really knew about. Right.
The ground floor.
Right. And then, the fact that he was running in places and stealing a bunch of cocaine from people, and he knew who the people was that had the cocaine. So at the point at which he started thinking about the opportunity of putting this stuff that I'm using from these people that I'm taking it from in this place where I'm operating weed from, it's like,
Right.
So once he got out of jail the first time, he was old enough and clean enough to realize how these things could be brought together to create an opportunity, and he did.
All of it is just kind of an accident, just like a lot of businesses, legal or illegal. A lot of it is just an accident of when you're born and where you're born.
That's right. That's right.
So you didn't have the cocaine tutelage, mentorship that you had in the dope space, the heroin space.
That's right. So during the period,
do you regret not just like moving up in your family's heroin operation and just steering clear of everything that came with the crack era, which was a lot of really bad?
No, it's no way, because there was a point where it just wasn't happening in the dope game. The heroin, it just wasn't happening.
Well, we haven't got to Baltimore yet.
Yeah, we got to Baltimore yet. But it wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. Like, I stopped selling heroin in 1982, 83.
Wow.
And went back to strictly cocaine. But at this point, because I'm of the early generation. Like, remember, when I'm selling it, it's not even crack yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm hip to it, and I'm ground zero with it. And once I started seeing people who had been hardcore heroin addicts for 10 and 15 years walking past us and going up to Cuba's and buying from him, and Cuba was up there just squatting. He just, he had the craft. He knew how to cook. He knew the coke and all that, whatever. So he was like a, it's like this.
He was like a sommelier for crack. He was a connoisseur.
Yes, he was. He was sommelier. That's right. So, when I started seeing that happening, I was like, I've been around heroin addicts all my life.
Yeah.
Right? I knew what that was. I knew what the depth of that was in terms of addiction.
Right.
So when I saw that, and I was like, yo, this didn't even stop to get no dope.
Wow.
He just went straight up, got it. And these are not people who are going to go trouncing around Harlem looking for dope to buy from other places.
Yeah.
They were only there because they knew T from Connecticut, and T told them, come on down, you're safe here, you're good here, whatever, got a space for you to do your thing and all that, whatever, good. So it wasn't like they were like, oh, we'll go and see Cuba, bypass Cavario, go see Cuba, get some coke, and then go somewhere else buy heroin. They weren't getting heroin.
Right.
They stopped.
Wow.
Not everybody, but a few hardcore.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, they loved me. So they would sit there, like the things I learned from these people, the exposure between music and art and these people, the exposure I got to the world enabled me to expand my mind, expand my horizons, still well ensconced in his life, but able to think beyond it, beyond these circumstances. Very comfortable in very high-end restaurants and so forth, whatever. Very, very comfortable.
Right.
Whereas you would never see any other black kids in there at all.
No.
Or a lot of times any other black people.
Right.
Because they just didn't feel like they were supposed to be in these places.
Right. Yeah, you had a driver.
Yes.
Throughout much of your career.
Yes.
You're 16 years old. Yeah, living a life of a 35-year-old married man. You're raising 4 stepchildren or, kids that are not biologically yours.
Right.
Yeah, you're certainly sexually active. I think you've got now 2 kids of your own by 16 or 17.
I got 2 kids of my own.
Cavario Jr. or who?
Cavario Jr. was born when I was 17.
Yeah.
But I had a son, another son who was born 32 days before him that I did not know was my son.
Right.
Right? His mother said it, but I wasn't certain of it. And I had impregnated her the day I met her on a bet with my cousin in L.A. And she was a virgin.
Oh, man.
But he was telling me how, I was like, yo, you just sleep with any girl that you come upon, like that's willing or whatever. He said, yeah. I said, man, that's not right. I don't. Why you do that? I don't do that. And he came up under me. So it's like, you didn't see me do like that. Why are you doing that? Like, I gave him his first girl he ever had sex with. It's like, so I know where you started. Like, why do you do that? He said, oh, you don't do it because you can't. I said, what do you mean I can't? There's nothing to that. I said, point out any girl right now. I will bet her right now. Just to show you how not special it is. And he pointed out my son's mom. He turned out to be my son's mom. Met her, talked to her. A few hours later, I had her up on the concourse of my mother's apartment.
She got pregnant.
She got pregnant, but who knew? You know what I mean? Who knew? And my son's, Cavario's mother was already pregnant. Wow. So he was born weeks late. My other son was born a couple of months early. So he ended up being born before like the woman who was pregnant already.
Right.
It was crazy. So I was like, nah, that can't be mine. How can he be born? But he was born prematurely. And I said, well, how much did he weigh? It was 7.5 pounds. I said, that ain't no premature, but that's not my kid.
Yeah.
And plus, she had a really bad reputation for not telling the truth.
Right.
Right.
This was
so
Renee?
her too. But no, this is Sabrina.
Oh, okay.
And when she hears that I just said her name, she's going to bug the out. I think I ever said her name in public before. But yeah, so, that's, I had kids. And I had another kid that I didn't know about at all. My daughter who just turned 40, And so, yeah, I mean, super active.
So you were,
and I had a girl who was living with me in my mother's house, and I was 16 and she was 24.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So you've already lived like 5 lifetimes by the time you're 16, 17 years old. You're back and forth. Did you graduate high school?
No.
Okay, but you had a fun time while you did at Music and Arts.
I had a great time.
Went to school with Dana Dane and not Dougie
Rick.
Fresh, but Slick Rick.
Sheena Arnold, Carl Payne.
Yeah, so you have these, and these are like hip, affluent. Like there's more to Harlem than just dope. Like there's so much talent there. There's so much.
Harlem is it's like the capital of all that is cool.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Style, attitude, behavior.
Right.
Those things, the foundation, those like the Boogie Down brought the hip hop culture and brought together those components, graffiti and the breakdancing. Yeah. I'm in the original of all those things.
Yeah.
I was brought in in the late 70s into the graffiti thing, Said Deuce and Crane and all those guys, whatever guys were respected graffiti writers in the Bronx, Saw 167, Bear 167, magnificent artists.
Right.
Magnificent artists. Their abilities were mind-boggling.
Painting the trains.
Yes. And their black books were like some Picasso, right? And then, the breakdancing thing, Prince Thunder Rock, Nelson Martinez, who are, I would say is like the first real dance superstar. Like wherever we went, people followed us around in hopes that we would bust a move or something like that. Wow. So that's what's happening in the Bronx in terms of what would become the most pervasive culture. You know what I mean?
Hip hop.
Right, hip hop.
Which is
now. But I'm back and forth, every day I'm back and forth. So I'm in Harlem and I'm doing my thing in Harlem, and that's where the underground aspect of it, that culture with the flyness and all that kind of, that's where that's coming from. And it's feeding this other culture. That's why a lot of the early rappers dressed like the early drug dealers.
Right. That's right.
Right?
Because they were the ones that had
leather
money,
suits,
the drug
MC
dealers.
boots, gold chains, you know what I'm saying? Bombers. They all got that from us. Because they got it from
Right.
my generation of young drug dealers who were influenced by the previous generation of, the main drug dealers, you know, right? Which that's out of Harlem.
Right.
The drug dealer, big drug, Guy Fisher's from the Bronx. He's not from Harlem.
Right.
He didn't become Guy Fisher until he got to Harlem, and then assimilated that style and attitude and whatever.
Malcolm X did not become Malcolm X until he came to Harlem.
That's right.
He
Exactly.
was Detroit Red or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So these things, the way they coalesced to create what became popular culture, what is today popular culture, it started in the grimiest parts of things, you know what I mean?
Course.
The bottom of every damn thing, and I was ground zero.
Yeah.
I was ground zero for all of it.
Yeah, and you had, it's like, you were living two worlds, like you'd be down shopping in Midtown and you're probably around white people.
All the time.
There's black people back then. Now it's a lot different, but
Yes.
I'm sure there were black people in Harlem that lived 10 blocks away from the Upper West Side where Jewish women that are professors are hanging out in cafes, and they would never meet any white people though.
Yep.
Like they were that isolated.
That's
but
right.
you were like,
they didn't come up, the white people didn't come above 110th Street.
it's crazy, but there's a whole different
was
New
dangerous.
York. Right. No, I know it's wild. But you were just lived a very, very rarefied life, even as a street guy. But yet you were also in the trenches. Like you were putting in these 12-hour shifts.
That's right.
I want to cut to one of your most successful, probably your most successful crack spot while you were still in New York. You're in the Bronx. You're running this thing really, really professionally and sophisticated. And you even keep a bag of ones for your pitcher. So if fiends come and they're $1 short and they're buying a $10 bottle and they only got 9, you would say, hey, no sweat, I'll make it up. Right? Cool like that you learn from your mom. Treat the customers well.
So I provided an experience, not just a service.
Yeah. So you're doing whatever, 10, 15, 20 grand a day in these spots. Have you forgotten about the dope, and have you seen the potential of growing in the cocaine business to where you could become the equivalent of Uncle Butch, but on the coke side? Like, what are your ambitions?
Yes. I've forgotten about the dope. I mean, it just wasn't trending.
Yeah.
Now, are there people making money with dope? Yeah. Hispanics had become very prominent in the dope space, right?
Puerto Ricans.
You had Tango and Cash, which I'm pretty sure was fentanyl fueled.
Wow.
Right?
Boy George in the Bronx.
George with Obsession.
Mm-hmm.
He had a strong dope connect.
He was getting it from the Chinese gangs down in Chinatown.
What do you call him? Fried rice. Call him fried rice. That's what his connect was.
Right.
He referred to him as fried rice from what I was told in terms of what he was, as far as he was willing to share anything. Like they never knew who his connect was. They never knew who George's connect was. You know what I mean? But they knew it was Chinese, and all they ever got was that he referred to him as fried rice.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he knew it was a Chinese connect.
So somehow in the 80s, those Chinese gangs from down in Lower Manhattan, Chinatown,
the Chinese
Lower
were the
East
ones
Side.
behind fentanyl.
Right, exactly. So precisely. So somehow they had a connect in Southeast Asia that made their availability of the smuggling, they made it pretty seamless, and they became the connect.
Right. Because
what they were in the 80s, what the Italians were in the 70s.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So like Bump, for instance, Ronnie Bump, he was getting it from the Italians and at a point from the Chinese at the same time, right? Which is why he always kept a lot of it, and it was always very good. Mm-hmm. He said, man, no Chinese. He said, one thing about the Chinese, though, no consignment.
No.
COD. You had to buy it. You had to buy it.
Okay.
He said, but, just take it to 60, 65. He said, it's good as a.
But now here you are selling crack, running a crack spot. What did you hate about it the most?
It's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me what I hated about the most.
Like, what is the hardest part? This is not an easy thing. Even though there's customers everywhere, there's competition everywhere.
That's not for me,
what's the hardest part?
Competition was nothing. For me, that was nothing because I had so much repertoire. I had so much in my tank, bro. Yeah. Like I said in the book, I've forgotten more about the game of death than most who have the time or opportunities to learn before their time is up and their opportunities are no more. Yeah. It's the truth. I hit the street having forgotten more about the than most of the cats would last long enough to learn, right? So I was never worried about competition, right? Once I knew what you were doing and how you were doing it, I knew how to outdo you, no problem, you know? So the worst part about it was dealing with those personalities on a daily basis, you know, people who they're sick. Addiction is a sickness, right? Psycho-emotional sickness. Yeah. So, and it manifests itself, that sickness manifests itself in so many different ways. It's not just like you come and you cop. It's not the supermarket. You just come and you cop and you leave most of the time. Although I did get to a point where I had disciplined my clientele to that. You know, I was very, very no nonsense. But nobody got hurt or robbed or killed doing business with me on either side. Right. Right. Not going along with the guidelines that I had set. Right. So, the difficulty came in with dealing with these personalities, bro. Like the games and the degrees that people would go through. Yeah. Like people would make you damn near beat them to death. Right. You know, before they'd be honest and forthright. You dig? Right. And dealing with that because I wasn't in it for anything other than the money. Right. I was not in it to, bolster myself or anything like that. Whatever. I was always honest. I was always the guy that, I would say, guy buys, you buy 8 for half a joint for me, whatever. And I would tell you, this is my price. I always had top quality, so my price would not be like everybody else's price. So it's like, this is my price. Well, someone's only charging this. I said, well, he can't do what my can do, right? You can cook my, you can shoot my, you can sniff my. It's going to perform like it's supposed to, no matter what. So I charge this, and I paid this for it. So I'm only making this off of it. You know what I mean? And I always told the truth. But because people were so accustomed to being lied to, they never believed me. Right. So people were like, yo, why you telling them about that? I say, don't believe me. You think I'm lying. Yeah. But I practiced telling the truth. I always told the truth. Right. Right? So in dealing with people who were lying all the damn time, and I'm being forthright, and I didn't understand, things like people are being the way they are because of whatever they've been through. They're not sitting there going, I think Cavario's stupid and I can get over it. They're not assessing me and incorporating me into this idea. I got nothing to do with it. I'm just a witness of the behavior. I'm not the cause. Yeah. I didn't know that. So back then I'd be like, who you think you playing with? Who you think you trying? And, I would do what comes next. Not out of anger or disdain or lack of regard, but just because this comes next. You did that, and as a response to that, training dictates I do this. But I hated to do anything other than give you what you asked for, get my money, and go about my business. Yeah. I just didn't like the, and that was the part, managing myself within that. Yeah. And not being drawn into, constant punitive behavior all the time.
Yeah, and when I read your book, you dealt constantly, like the crews, the people that were working for you. Clearly, none of them had been raised by wolves, had been raised by people in the game. So they're kids. You can't really blame them, but they're ghetto kids. So they're short-sighted. They live for today, right? And so they just are always up.
A lot of them are...
a lot of them are addicted too.
Yes.
A lot of people got addicted to smoking crack. A lot of young
low, and I did not know.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. I did not know.
Yeah.
Right.